Mpap chu beshu kama chukan bej. Oh, I'm sorry. The universal translator must have been turned off. That was Klingon. What I meant was today we're going to be talking about Star Trek Klingon Academy, a ship combat simulator from the year 2001. This game is a favorite of many Star Trek fans for its deep combat, excellent damage modeling, and in-game cutscenes starring famous actors from the movies. But according to many sources, its development was a bit of a nightmare. There was delays, the release was rushed, and the development team ended up being terminated. While the reviews are positive, it never really received the recognition it should have. But let's dive in and learn a bit more about the history of this forgotten gem. Before we get any further, I just want to say Grob Chash Paj Grob Chug Grob Daha Shug, which is Klingon for, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and feel free to subscribe. Thanks. So, in an unusual move, the head designer of this game, Ron Hodge, posted an extremely long post-mortem about the disaster that this game development was. Typically, the things he talks about are kept quiet so as to not burn any bridges in your field of work. However, he didn't really seem to care and laid it all out. If you want to read this, it is still posted on KlingonAcademy.com, but we'll talk a lot more about this later. Let's get down to basics. The game was released on June 22nd in the year 2000. However, development started in 1997, a year after Starfleet Academy was released. Despite the poor sales of Starfleet Academy, Interplay moved ahead with Klingon Academy, seeing it was a way to basically make a glorified expansion pack for Academy, yet charge full price. They wanted it to be made quickly and cheaply to make a fast buck. However, claims made by the advertising team soon necessitated the game be something far more daring. But due to budgetary constraints, the Klingon Academy dev team was forced to basically take bits and pieces of Starfleet Academy's code as the basis for a new game. Unfortunately, this code was already outdated and didn't work well. In fact, up until right before release, the game was limited to 640 by 480, a extremely low and outdated resolution. The executives from Interplay seemed to be incompetent, not understanding their products. They at first refused to pay the actor Christopher Plummer to appear in the game until executives at Paramount demanded it. The head designer complained that Brian Fargo, who we have talked about in previous games, was more interested in graphics than actual gameplay, which sabotaged the dev team by forcing them to worry about superficial things instead of working on the bones of the game. The team did not get along. The managers and executives were not helpful. The code was disjointed and outdated, and communication between the departments was poor at best. The future of the game seemed in jeopardy. But as things became more and more hopeless, Interplay realized the dire situation and assigned a highly regarded executive to take the reins of the project. He was their fixer of sorts, Brian Christian. So he took control of the project and focused it to get the game made, at the cost of the overall scope of perhaps what they had wanted to accomplish. If you find game development fascinating, I encourage you to read this post-mortem for yourselves. It gives an interesting and honest insight into the development of early video games. But according to all involved, the game was an absolute nightmare to work on, and it's a miracle that it turned out as awesome as it was. So what exactly was the problem with trying to make this game? Isn't it just a Klingon reskin of Starfleet Academy with a couple added features? Well, that's complicated. The answer is both yes and no. They wanted to fix the mistakes of Starfleet Academy and create a much more advanced video game. Their goals were to add detailed damage modeling, to create a large number of ships, and to make the game control more like Star Trek and less like fighter jets. Well, this was easier said than done when you have bad management, low budget, and interpersonal conflicts in the dev team. In an ideal world, with Interplay's full support and with more time, who knows how groundbreaking this game could have been. But despite all this, we still had somewhat of a revolutionary product. So what did this game do that was worth all the headache? Let's talk damage modeling. In previous games, when ships took damage, there was no physical indicator that anything was wrong, unless an entire warp nacelle was destroyed. However, in this game, damage was beautifully rendered exactly where the hit occurred. Chunks would break off, sparks and debris would fly out, and you could see clear through massive hull breaches. You could see the glowing, damaged interior of the vessels. Now, this was absolutely amazing in 2001. Let's take a look at some examples of this damage modeling. The devs internally called it the Ginsu system, a joke based on the infomercial knives that used to be sold in the USA. Unfortunately, one thing I've noticed is that even with compatibility mods and voodoo, there's still a lot of visual glitches that make the game not look as good as it did on original systems. Not sure if you noticed there, but you could actually see through the ship where the hull breach was. Pretty cool. To this day, no one has really done quite the same thing in terms of damage modeling. Star Citizen has some damage modeling, but nothing as specific as this. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they did this. I believe they had two models for every ship, and the interior model was the damaged one. So when you would remove part of the top model, the damaged interior would be showing underneath. But with modern new technologies like soft body physics, perhaps something more could be done. Check out games like Beam NG Drive or Wreckfest for examples of insanely accurate damage modeling in modern games. But to this day, what the devs did was unique. What else did this game do exceptionally well? Well, the flight models felt much more realistic and heavy than Starfleet Academy. Now, these were massive capital ships, and they handled slowly and with weight, as they did in the shows and movies. Smaller ships were quicker, and larger ships were slower. Collisions were extremely damaging. It felt like two massive naval ships duking it out, which was more in line with what Star Trek ship battles were like. They weren't supposed to feel like TIE fighters and X-Wings just zipping around. Is that it? Not even close. The game also had really cool cutscenes. They hired Christopher Plummer, who played General Chang in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, to reprise his role. And he honestly took it super seriously and did a great job. Sure, the green screen doesn't look great, and it's an obvious stunt double, but hey, it's still General Chang. One of my favorite Star Trek quotes is from one of these cutscenes where Chang is talking to an enemy captain. In fact, we get to hear the voices of Christopher Plummer, David Warner, Michael Clark Duncan, and of course, Michael Dorn. So that is one thing that will always be appreciated in this game. If you have a minute, check out the full Klingon Academy intro movie. It's pretty interesting, and it actually sort of sets the stage for the events of Star Trek VI. What else was cool? Well, the single-player missions were fun. It had an interesting story, but you could also just create an instant action in a number of solar systems with unique hazards and with tons of varieties of ships to use. each with unique stats, models, and sometimes even unique weapons. Now, I'm not sure if you can count this as a positive for the game, since it wasn't included with the game, but the mods for Klingon Academy are astounding. In fact, there is a total overhaul called Next Generation Academy that adds in just a stupid amount of content for the game, including all the ships from the Next Generation era. We're talking Galaxy classes, Defiance, Boar Cubes, Warbirds, Negvars, Dominion, even the Crystalline Entity, each with unique weapons, effects, and damage modeling. Let's watch some gameplay footage of some of these mods.
Will protect my target. To attack my target. Yes, sir.
Alright, I mean, that was pretty cool, right? Modders really did an excellent job with this, and it helps keep the game fresh. Now, you may have noticed that there are some serious issues with running this game on modern PCs. There is occasional artifacting, dots on the screen, huge input lag on the menus, and at the moment, there's not a lot we can do about it. Hopefully someone at some point decides to release it on GOG with a modern system update, or even a remaster or a remake would be cool. Because getting this game to run involves a lot of work using Voodoo and compatibility modes and third-party patches that simply most gamers aren't going to want to do. So let's talk briefly about the plot of the game. You are a cadet at a very difficult Klingon Officers Academy. At the beginning of the game, you are completing missions in a simulator under the tutelage of General Chang. Once you graduate, the Klingon Empire is plunged in the Civil War, and you support Chang, until at the end you fight the Romulans and eventually defeat the traitor Melkor. Chang isn't too thrilled about what happens, and it sets in motion the events of Star Trek 6. So while a Klingon Civil War is not exactly original, it does follow the shows and movies and remains canon. One additional thing I wanted to touch on was that unlike Starfleet Academy, you are able to sit in a gunnery chair and fire side and rear facing enemies, and have an AI navigate your ship. While this is not done well, and the AI usually flies around in a way where you can't really use your front weapons, it is better than nothing. So it made the ship feel much more like a large capital ship and less like a fighter jet. The levels in Klingon Academy were much more diverse and interesting than Starfleet Academy. There were levels in asteroid fields, planetary rings, black holes, the coronas of stars, and other hazardous areas, and these hazards would actually affect the outcome if you use them to your advantage. Alright, well, what did the game do poorly? In reading many reviews from 2001, many people complained about the controls of the game. The problem is finding the balance between simulation and arcade. How realistic do you want the game? How many options do you want to give the player? Well, they definitely lean towards simulation. However, it can become burdensome to try to rebalance your shields, target enemy ships, adjust your energy levels, repair systems, and change your speed, all while piloting your ship and firing weapons. That's why you have a crew. Having the player forced to do all of this was a little overwhelming. Star Trek Bridge Commander seems to have found a little bit better of a balance at this. Another complaint I saw was that the game had extremely useless and limited multiplayer options. Another remnant of days gone by is this kind of multiplayer, with Direct Connect or IPX. There was no way to just go to a lobby or be matchmaked into a game with random players. Unless you had a friend with a perfectly set up system, it was basically impossible to do any kind of multiplayer. How cool would it have been to have a fully fleshed out multiplayer with user made missions, co op, or ranked matchmaking? Unfortunately, that was never to be. A review I read from a major PC gaming magazine stated that they found the combat too cumbersome and wished the ships moved faster. So I'll take this with a grain of salt because they made the ships respond like this as a response to the biggest complaint about Starfleet Academy, which was that the ships moved too fast. So maybe this particular reviewer was a fan of dogfighting games like X-Wing or Wing Commander, but if you don't like capital ship fighting, then this definitely isn't the game for you. Well, what about me personally? What did I like and not like about the game? I always thought the damage modeling was super cool. We never had anything else like it. And the fact that you were the Klingons as opposed to the Federation was a bold move. The cutscenes were fun, since Star Trek VI had been my favorite Star Trek movie for a long time. But some things I didn't like is that you spent most of the time tracking your opponents, and not being able to fire multiple weapon arcs in first-person commander mode was also a little frustrating. You should have been able to tell your weapons officer to just fire all arcs at will when an enemy was in their sight. I also felt that the instant action was just too limited. It was just a two-team deathmatch. The lack of a lobby-based matchmaking multiplayer really killed the game's replayability as well. The AI also seemed to target you disproportionately compared to your teammates, and a lot of time you just spent running away and repairing while they chased you and your allies attacked them. A lot of times as well, the AI would unintentionally ram you and heavily damage your ship. As I usually do in these videos, it's time to ask the question, why are we talking about this forgotten video game from the year 2000? Well, I feel that this game is an important part of Star Trek heritage. It was during that boom of Star Trek games, where we had first-person shooters, ship sims, real-time strategy, turn-based strategy, ship designers, third-person adventure games, and portable. In many ways, it was a golden era for Star Trek fans. But this game was unique in the scope of the aspirations of the developers. And maybe they didn't quite get there, but they aimed for the stars, and you gotta respect it. And of course, just playing the game was a blast. We'll never know what the full potential of this game was, but learning about all the developer drama was fascinating. It's a shame that the entire development team got laid off, and also that the game did not sell well, but many true fans look back with fondness on the game. Now, I remember in 2001, my friend's grandfather was in his mid-60s, and he told me that he found the demo disc to this game at a store and installed it on his computer, and he had a ton of fun and wished he could own the full game. I had no idea people of that age group could be gamers, but this game bridged the gap. Do I think that modern gamers watching this video should rush to get this game and play it? Not really. There is no legal way to purchase this game digitally at the moment. I am hoping that GOG does a release, or Steam or someone, but I'm not holding my breath. If you do manage to get a copy, it is not easy to get it to run well on modern PCs. There are compatibility patches and you can run Voodoo, but if you are a die-hard Star Trek fan and you want to see a Galaxy class fight a Borg cube, or a Sovereign fight a Warbird, or a Decorum Marauder fight a Dominion battlecruiser, well, maybe this game is for you. The Star Trek IP has been stagnant for a while in terms of PC games. I think we can all agree that line is a joke, and other than that, it's just mobile games. But a Starfleet Academy 2 or a Klingon Academy 2 would be really cool, but I doubt it would really find an audience. There are a number of games that we haven't talked about yet in this series of videos. There's The Fallen, Dominion Wars, Starfleet Command, Away Team, New Worlds, Birth of the Federation, but I promise I will do my best to get to all of them. I've also been playing the Armada 3 mod for Sins of a Solar Empire, and I promise I'll do a video on that eventually. Also, I was reading that they're making good progress on the Armada 4 mod for Sins of a Solar Empire 2, so we can all look forward to that. Again, I just want to thank everybody for watching the video, for all the likes and comments and subscribes. I really do appreciate it. To end this video, what I'm going to do is show some of my favorite clips from Klingon Academy.
Emergency stop.